So in my last video, I said that I took it as a sign of distress for the upcoming finale of The Boys that we're already starting to get self-referential jokes in story about how the finale will not please everyone and that the show's own creator is saying the same thing publicly. I said that it all read to me like this show's creators are already gearing up to use humor and other excuses to justify their poor writing to the audience as soon as the finale does flop in order to temper the inevitable outrage when the audience is dissatisfied. Well, just the other day, the show's creator, Eric Kripke, did an interview with TV Guide wherein he added even more fuel to that fire by insulting fans of the show who've been sending him messages to express discontentment with how The Boys Season 5 has not included much epic action and has included so many filler episodes. And I'm not entirely surprised because this is a recent and very negative trend with Hollywood screenwriters to basically excuse their own bad writing by saying that it's the fans or the viewers' fault for not enjoying watching a dumpster fire. They write a lackluster product, a movie, TV show, film, where all or at least most viewers and fans recognize it as subpar, then put the blame on the fans and viewers for not enjoying it or not understanding it or not being progressive enough or being too toxic to appreciate it. They say that fans or viewers who are dissatisfied should just write their own show. They do anything to avoid just owning up to it that they missed the mark. Anyway, I don't generally do reactions to writer interviews, but I'm going to make an exception to that rule this time and go through this Eric Kripke TV Guide interview just because of how simultaneously funny and infuriating and fallacious I find the things that this man said to justify his own misfire of a product. So to start off, Eric says none of the things that happen in the last few episodes of The Boys Season 5 will matter if you don't flesh out the characters. I'm getting a lot of online dissatisfaction, to put it politely. And I'm like, what are you expecting? Are you expecting a huge battle scene every episode? One, I can't afford that. And two, it would be so empty and dull, and it would just be about shapes moving without having any import. Alright, just no. To almost everything he said, no. Nonsense. Granted, I haven't seen the last two episodes of The Boys Season 5, so who knows, though I highly doubt it. Maybe whatever happens in those last two episodes will be the best television anyone has ever seen, but can only be enjoyed by someone who's seen the first 6 episodes as they've been presented. Maybe. And yes, I agree that good stories generally do flesh out the characters. But on the other hand, yes, I do expect not one but multiple major battle scenes every episode of The Boys Season 5. That's a fair expectation of the limited 8-episode final season of a show with a nature like that of The Boys. Especially when Eric himself promised that this season was going to be the show's version of the apocalypse. Especially when Season 4 closes out with an evil Superman and hundreds of fascist superheroes effectively controlling a military state that's being opposed by a handful of decent citizens, most of whom are in prison camps. Yes, that's exactly what I expect. And if Eric is saying that he can't afford it, then he shouldn't have promised it or built up to it. That's called false advertisement. That's called disrespecting the viewers. And for him to say that including too much action would be empty and dull or just about shapes moving without having any import, that's why the previous 4 seasons exist. To build up the major characters in their arcs so that they can be effectively paid off in a more epic and visceral final season that needs less explanation and exposition, so that the majority of that character development can occur before the final season as opposed to distracting from it. Moving on, Eric defends episodes 4 and 5 of The Boys Season 5, those nothing placeholder episodes where the boys got possessed by rage-inducing plant spores and where major plot points revolved around Butcher's dogs getting sick from chocolate and the Deeps having an eel to unalive a director by chewing through his butt in a toilet. Eric says it was important, for example, to really wrap out where Firecracker was. It was important to evolve Soldier Boy and Homelander's relationship and to hear how hopeless MM feels in episode 4. It was important to see that the boys are fracturing between people who are gathering around Butcher and people who are gathering around Huey. And again, I've just got to call nonsense here. First, Firecracker was a C-tier bad guy at best. She never had any story worthy of in-depth development or payoff. Even if it was important to wrap up her story in such a poetic way as it was handled, it was absolutely foolish to waste one of this show's final 8 episodes on doing a backstory dump for her. That's the type of move that an effective writer would have pulled in seasons 3 or 4 at latest. As for the rest of Eric's quote, yeah, I hear him in that those other character development beats are and were important. Here's where he's dead wrong. Those developments still could have occurred in episodes that were written better than the ones we got. For instance, episodes that focused more on the main characters of the Boys series than on setting up Vought Rising as a spin-off show with particularly that ill-advised Compound V1 bomb site plotline. Taking time for character development does not excuse sloppy or predictable writing. Anyway, more. Eric says next, at no point during the writing of it was I like, oh yeah, we're making filler episodes, so who cares? We all thought at the time we're really getting these important character details. We have something like 14 characters, maybe 15, and I owe it to all of them in that television is the character business. I owe it to all of them to flesh them out and humanize them and their stories. And there's really no other way to address that than to just state the obvious. Whether Eric or the other writers thought they were making filler episodes, whether or not they planned it, whether or not they put care into the writing process, making filler episodes is what happened. Just Eric is talking about all the characters he's got to service, and instead of actually tightly focusing the final season on them, he's introducing more characters from the Vought Rising spinoff and wasting time that should be spent on those 14 or 15 characters by doing that cross-country MacGuffin hunt for V1 and doing silly side quests like a plotline where Butcher's dog gets a point of view segment where he diddles a Homelander doll and gets sick from eating chocolate. Yes, I've mentioned it twice now. It's that ridiculous. Okay, next. Eric said that the writer's room felt that quote-unquote crazy big things were happening in every episode. Then he said it's just sometimes it's a giant character moment, but apparently just because it's not plot, you're like nothing happened. I'm like nothing happened? What? The craziest, biggest moves happened. It wasn't just someone shooting someone else and going pew pew pew. And if that's what you want, you're watching the wrong show. And again, I've just got to call this man out for his nonsense here, because he straight up contradicts himself when he admits that the writers purposefully focused on things that were not plot. If something is not plot, then it is by definition filler. And Eric might not know this, but plot includes character development. That's part of the story. And most viewers would excuse moments that are light on violence in favor of poignant and overwhelmingly solid character development. The problem with The Boys Season 5 is that the character development has been overwhelmingly underwhelming, as well as the plot, the action, etc. That's the problem. But moving on, Eric's last point there almost made me laugh the first time I read it. How Eric says that viewers are watching the wrong show if they want more scenes where people shoot each other and where there's a high emphasis on crazy spectacle. You think, has this man forgotten what show he's running? This is The Boys. The Boys, where gunplay is one of the tamest things that have happened, where depraved acts of S and unaliving happen almost every episode from the pilot until the end of season 4's finale. No, Eric, they're not watching the wrong show if they expect violence and blood and the opposite of life. Just what is the matter with this man? So, but okay, last quote. Eric finally said during this interview, another thing I'll say that's interesting is it might be, you can tell I've thought a lot about it. because I'm not obsessively online looking at people mad at me. You are. But I think it might be a byproduct of a weekly release. For as much as I love the weekly release, because we should take time to have people talking and arguing about the show, my guess is if you were binging it or watching it all at once, you would have a very different experience than watching one episode a week that you might find slow or slower than usual, and then you have to wait a whole other week for the next piece. I think that aggravates people probably. To be clear, I'm a proponent for this release schedule, but I've been wondering if that was one of the side effects. And to that, I simply say, it's a poor artist who blames the tools. For the record, I am not a fan of the weekly streaming model for reasons that I can cover in another video, but suffice it to say that Eric Kripke knew that this show was going to be releasing week by week when his team wrote it. He even pushed Amazon for that staggered release model for every season of this show, beginning with season 2 after the first season aired all at once. So if he did not want viewers to react negatively to getting drip released a show that was intended to be binged, he shouldn't have let his people write The Boys season 5 as a show that was meant to be binged. He should have planned accordingly. He should have planned each episode to be epic enough to stand on its own while tying into the larger whole. He has that background. He wrote network television with 22 episode seasons. I don't think the weekly release schedule is the problem, though. The problem really is more so poor writing, poor planning, and too much focus on tie-ins for the Vought Rising spinoff. And there are people who got the first 7 episodes of The Boys season 5 in advance to watch all at once for review purposes, who did binge them and who said basically the same thing that other viewers who got those episodes on drip release are saying now. So it's clearly not the binge versus anti-binge model that's the problem. But even if the weekly release schedule were the problem, it's not an excuse for Eric or his team. They still should have done better, because they knew it was going to happen, and they should not be blaming the viewers for their own failure. Anyway, though, that's enough from me. As always, that's just my opinion. Feel free to share yours, and once you have, don't forget to like and follow.